Hi YouTube, how you doing? This is Mr. Tybox123, and in this video I'm going to be bringing you a direct comparison or a versus between the iPhone 4 and the Samsung Galaxy S2. Now I know this is not specifically a very fair comparison because the iPhone 4 is over a year old and the Galaxy S2 is obviously brand new. But these two phones really do stack up quite well against one another, and I think it's interesting to just look between the two and see which one fares best in which different levels of criteria. So I've broken this review down into 11 different sections of criteria. Now let's start off with the form factor of each of these two phones. The Samsung Galaxy S2 is 125.3 by 66.1 by 8.49 millimeters, and that weighs in at 117 grams. The iPhone 4 is 115.2 by 58.7 by 9.3 millimeters, and that weighs in at 137 grams. Now if we take the two phones and we compare them directly, you can see that the Samsung Galaxy S is very slightly wider and also longer than the iPhone 4. But in terms of thinness, it's actually slightly thinner than the iPhone 4. Now I think what's important here when we're looking at the form factor is to actually look at the screen size real estate it offers and also the weight. Now really we want as much screen real estate as possible, and we also want the phone to be as light as possible. So in both areas there, the Samsung Galaxy S2 definitely wins out, having a slightly larger screen and also weighing quite considerably less than the iPhone 4. So in round one we're going to give that to the Samsung Galaxy S2. Now let's move on to section 2. I'm going to talk about the storage. Now both the Apple iPhone and the Samsung Galaxy S2 are both available in not only 16GB versions but also 32GB versions. Now the Samsung has the edge on the iPhone because this can actually be increased by the addition of a memory card, which can increase it up to an extra 32 gigs. So if you have the 32 gig model, you can actually go up to 64 gig. Now they both perform equally, so in this section also the Samsung Galaxy S2 wins out, and that's going to be 2 points to the S2. Now on to round 3, let's talk about the battery life. Now I've been using the iPhone 4 for about a year, and I've been using the S2 now for about 3 or 4 weeks, and I use them both equally to one another, and I've definitely found that the Samsung Galaxy S2 has a slightly better battery life than the iPhone 4. Now if we actually look at the technical specifications of the battery in each phone, we see that the S2 has a 1650 mAh battery and the iPhone 4 has a 1420 mAh battery. Now those particular specifications don't really mean a great deal because, as you'll see when we come to the technical specifications, the Galaxy S2 has quite a much larger specification than the iPhone 4, being that it has a dual-core processor and a slightly larger screen. But in real life usage, I've definitely found that the S2 does slightly last longer than the iPhone 4, and in this particular section of criteria we're looking at, again, that's another point to the Samsung Galaxy S2 winning this round. Now let's move on to section 4, which is going to be the display. Now the size of the S2 screen is 4.27 inches and the size of the iPhone screen is 3.5 inches. However, the Galaxy S2 has 800 by 480 pixels and the iPhone 4 actually has 960 by 640 pixels because of that Retina display. So in terms of the actual display, although the iPhone 4 has a smaller display, it actually packs more pixels. The screen used by the Galaxy S2 is an AMOLED Plus screen, and the screen used by the iPhone 4 is LCD with IPS technology. Now this is a kind of difficult round to score really, because although with the Galaxy S2 you get that slightly larger screen, with the iPhone 4 you get that much higher density of pixels, giving you a greater viewing experience. So I'm going to have to give this round a draw between the two devices, so that's going to be 1 point each to both of these devices. Now before we start going into some small tests here, let's talk about the actual technical specifications. The Galaxy S2 has a 1.2 GHz dual core chip with 1 GB of RAM, whilst the iPhone 4 runs an Apple A4 chip with half a gig of RAM. So in terms of technical specifications, the Samsung Galaxy S2 most definitely is of a higher specification than the iPhone 4. So let's see if we can do a couple of reasonably real life tests here and see how that performance really comes out in real life. So let's just launch a couple of common applications. I haven't got any open on either device, so none of them are cached. You can see here and here. So let's just launch up Twitter, for example, and see how quickly that launches on both. So what we could see there is that on the Samsung Galaxy S2 it most definitely launched quite a bit quicker than it did on the iPhone 4. So let's go into something like the camera. And again we could see that the camera came up quicker on the Samsung Galaxy S2 than it did on the iPhone 4. And I think we're going to obviously see this quite a lot in most of the sort of general day-to-day running of the operating system because of the superior technical specifications of the Samsung Galaxy S2. And I don't really think we need to spend too much time realising that the Samsung Galaxy S2 really does outperform the iPhone 4. So again, in this round it's going to be another point to the S2. Now let's talk a little bit about the inbuilt applications that you get on each device. So for example, if we go to the camera, on each one of these devices they're obviously both cameras, they obviously both take videos, and they obviously both take photos. But really it's on the iPhone 4 that's kind of as far as it goes. There's not really a great deal of configuration that you can actually do on the camera. When we look at the S2 for example, there really is an entirely vast range of settings that you can actually configure on the camera, right the way down from ISO to metering to anti-shake, blink detection, and really a whole range of different configuration features that you can configure on the Samsung Galaxy S2. So in that department, for example, that's really another area where the S2 outperforms the iPhone 4. If we go into the maps that we get on both of these operating systems, you can see that the iPhone version is quite a lot more simplified than the version you get on the Samsung Galaxy S2, and again there's that little bit more flexibility and customization that you can do in this application. Now if we talk about the inbuilt applications in general, there really are a lot more inbuilt applications on the S2 than there are on the iPhone 4, right down to things like the video creator, whereas on the iPhone 4 you have to buy that in iMovie. And although all the basics are there on both operating systems, you know, maps, text messaging, mail, all that kind of stuff, in the S2 they really do take that another level and give you things like Keys Air, like I already mentioned, the movie maker that comes free with the operating system, along with things like an FM radio and a file browser, and even to the extent of Polaris Office, which enables you to generate various different kinds of office documents, and that would really be something that you'd have to purchase extra on the iPhone 4. So in terms of the inbuilt apps, most definitely again the Samsung Galaxy S2 is going to win round 6, and that's going to be another point to the Samsung Galaxy S2. Now we're moving into round 7, and this is going to be the third-party applications. Now I think this is going to be a very quick one to resolve, because we all know that the App Store in the iOS world is definitely more fully featured than it is in the Android marketplace. So there's going to be a much more vast range of applications and games in the iOS App Store than there is in the Android marketplace. So this round is going to go to the iPhone 4, and that's going to be a point there for the iPhone 4. Now I already mentioned the cameras, and it's going to be the cameras that we're going to be looking at here in round 8. Now I've already mentioned the fact that you've got much more flexibility of control in terms of the configuration of the camera on the Samsung Galaxy S2, but let's talk a little bit about the actual technical specifications. On the S2 you've got an 8 megapixel rear capable of 1080p and a 2 megapixel front. On the iPhone 4 you've got a 5 megapixel rear and a VGA on the front, and that rear camera is capable of 720p. Now having actually tested these two cameras quite significantly, the S2 again is going to be winning this round in terms of both the extra configuration and flexibility it gives you, and also in terms of the video and camera quality it gives you. So that's going to be another round there to the S2. Now we're heading over into round 9, and round 9 is going to be the connectivity round. Now let's look at the technical specifications again. They both have Wi-Fi, they both have Bluetooth, but on the S2 it's Bluetooth version 3 against the iPhone's Bluetooth 2.1. They both have 3G, they both have Wi-Fi tethering, but on the S2 you've also got the extras of NFC, 4G using HSDPA, and also DLNA. So again, in terms of the connectivity round, I think the Samsung Galaxy S2 is definitely going to have to win out here, so that's going to be another round to the S2. Now, heading into round 10. Round 10 is going to be the operating system. So on the S2 we've got Android 2.3, and on the iPhone 4 we've got iOS 4.3.3. Now this is going to be a difficult round to score. They're both very good operating systems, and actually they're fairly different to one another in the approach that they've taken. On iOS it's all very simple. You have a screen and you have applications that you click on, and that's really the extent of the interface on iOS. With the operating system on Android, there's much more flexibility in terms of being able to add widgets and being able to customize your environment a lot more than you can in the iOS operating system, as you can see here. Now, although an operating system isn't completely about flexibility and customization, in this day and age I really do think that an operating system should be able to provide that for the end user, and iOS really doesn't cater for that at this particular moment in time, and I think that really lets the operating system down. On the other hand, you could say that iOS is definitely easier to use. It's much more simplified than Android, and would be much easier for you to use for an everyday user that's not particularly technically competent. And in terms of navigation, I would definitely say that it's probably a little bit easier to navigate your way around the iOS application set, but the flexibility that you have on this Android operating system, I think, has to win this round out in terms of the operating system. So I'm going to have to give this round to the Android operating system. As we lead into round 11, which is going to be the price. Now, in terms of price, although they're fairly similar, the S2 is slightly cheaper in both the 16 and 32GB models, around the £50 to £100 mark difference. So in terms of price, Samsung have managed to release this phone at a cheaper price than Apple have on the iPhone 4. So again, that's going to be another round to the Samsung Galaxy S2. Now, just to come to some kind of conclusion on this comparison, like I said at the beginning, it's not particularly a fair test because one of these devices is a year older than the other one. And although the Samsung Galaxy S2 has won on almost every single round here, they're still a very comparable phone, and they still sit in exactly the same area of the market as one another. And it's going to be very interesting to see either the iPhone 4S or the iPhone 5 when that comes out over the next couple of months. So if we just add up the scores here, we've got 10 points to the Samsung Galaxy S2 against a measly 2 for the iPhone 4. Now, in regards to what my opinion is between the two, I've really enjoyed using this Samsung Galaxy S2. I will keep it and I will continue to use it, but my personal preference, even though the Galaxy S2 is better in every single area almost, is still the iPhone 4. Now, I can't really give you a decent reason for that. It might be the fact that it's just what I'm used to, it's what I prefer, I really don't know. But whenever I go to use one of these two phones, I always find myself going for the iPhone 4. So that was my comparison of the two. I hope you found that useful. Thanks very much for watching, guys. If you like this video, subscribe for more, and I'll see you all in the next one.